Hello and welcome to this interview with the author. Today I'm joined by Carl Allchin and I'm your host, Tableau Tim. Carl, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you, Tim. Lovely to speak to you this evening with your nice warm fire there. I know winter's on its way, but I didn't think it was quite there just yet.
Exactly. Well, in the age of coronavirus, I think fireside chats have taken sort of a digital format. So I actually managed to find a looping YouTube video that has a fireside on some part of our screen so we can at least try and emulate sort of a real fireside chat. Today we're talking about something that you've just recently launched, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite scary. I've written a book all about Tableau Prep. So yeah, there's the weird little marsupial in the back corner of the screen here is a quokka adorning the front cover of my recent release from O'Reilly. So yeah, Tableau Prep up and running.
I know you've got a prop there, so show the audience the prop you've got there.
So I have to thank, I teach at the data school as my main job, and I have to thank our 20th cohort for getting me my own little quokka, as we don't have them in the UK. So there's Quacky for the world. The team went above and beyond in finding him somewhere in the world to get him to me.
Good stuff, good stuff. For everyone joining us, you might be aware that this is actually a YouTube premiere. So what we're doing is we've pre-recorded this session. I actually talked to Carl a couple of days ago, but we're actually live in the comments responding to your questions and answers. So by all means, get involved and we'll try and make sure that we get around to all your questions and even stick around a bit after as well. Okay, so Carl, you wrote a book. What sort of led you down that path?
That's a really interesting question because it was kind of by accident. So first of all, like you've got to have something to say, and I feel like I've stumbled across a 15-year career to lead me to this point of going, I need to write a book about self-service data preparation and all that entails. And as a history and politics student, I think that was a bit of a shock to get to that point. I don't think anyone would have foresaw that with whatever type of machine learning or AI that you pumped into that algorithm, unless something was very weird and off. So I kind of got there by the process of writing more and more about a tool that nobody else seemed to be paying a huge amount of attention to, and I couldn't get why, because for me, it was a big kind of game changer, which was quite fun that suddenly we've got this thing that really empowers people using their own data, asking more questions, all of the stuff that I know me and you do in our day job every single day and love helping other people do. All of a sudden, kind of, yeah, there's this tool that could take that even further. So it felt quite fun and exciting to get stuck into it. And I kind of got known for that a bit more. So that eventually turned into a conversation about writing a book.
To an author. It's a bold thing to do. I'm always one of these people that think, taking on a book is quite an involved sort of process. You have to really fully commit to it, and I'm sure we'll get to that a little later on, the trials and tribulations of being an author. But I guess you touched on something there in your description of how you sort of arrived at writing this book, which is this concept of what is data prep. I mean, we've joked a bit about it in the intro, but I guess in writing the book, you probably had to tackle that first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not an easy one to tackle because like anything, analytics, it means completely different things to different people, which we've got to kind of get over that point first of all to then go and tackle the subject. So really for me, I've taken it from the perspective of what I've stumbled across in kind of the career so far as to what data prep is for most people. And there's a bit of a range there, that for lots of people that's sitting down, working with Excel, churning through preparation for something else in terms of an answer of a question, whether that's reshaping data or that's actually kind of cleaning up the values that are there at the moment, all the way through to doing some really decent work in SQL or Python, getting that data set ready for maybe yourself or somebody else to go and conduct that analysis. But it's the art, the point is in that element of the word preparation. It's that kind of, you're doing it for some other reason, and I think that's a big chunk.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've always I guess it's a concept that I've always struggled to communicate to clients, because data prep takes part pretty much throughout the entire analytical process. There's no, even when you're visualizing or putting something or showing someone something, you sometimes make small tweaks, and that there's a sort of micro bits of data prep. And so it kind of led me to think a bit more about this concept of self-service data prep. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm very much for the empowerment of the end user. And I've had many heated debates, let's call it that, with people whose job it really is to make sure that data remains safe and secure. And I'm absolutely for that. But having and empowering the end user to take a data set and making use of it to answer their questions. For background, my job before I joined the information lab was as a small team of 3, empowering an organization of over 100,000 people to answer their questions with data. There's no way the 3 of us know their job better than them. So to get the right person to use data to answer that question, that has to be with the tools in their hands rather than ours. So if we can empower them with, then it was the visualization part, but if we can empower them with the preparation part to make that visualization a bit better or easier or greater context, for me, that's kind of the really big part of that. So yeah, that was the kind of real element of where self-service comes in. You know your job better than I do, therefore let me go and put the skills in your hands where possible. And certainly it felt like Tableau Prep was a big step on at lowering that barrier to entry for so many people.
Right. This is really interesting. I think it's nice to sort of hear you talk a bit about that. You talked a bit about earlier on your own experiences in your past background. So I guess we've done a soft intro into data prep. We're going to come to Tableau Prep in a second. You've written a whole book about it, but let's dig a bit more into your own background. So to tell us a bit about you, head coach of the data school. How does data prep sort of come into that, and how have you arrived at this point where you're now writing essentially a book about data prep from your sort of historical perspective?
Yeah, I suppose for one, throughout my career, that's actually always been a battle. Once I've got my hands on the data, I'm good. I'm ready to go. And my career kind of started in a kind of roundabout the wrong order. I managed a data team first of all at a large insurer, and my team were the people who were sitting there doing the crunching of the Excel piece. I then went to a large bank where that's me doing the visualization, the analytics, doing the data preparation, using SQL skills further. And all of that bubbled up to having a kind of really fun time consulting with the information lab. And that was really where going around lots of different organizations, seeing that loads of people were on this kind of step ladder spectrum of going right from I'm having to work in Excel, that's the skill set or the tools I've got access to, all the way up to I'm coding my own solutions, I'm connecting to the databases and some pretty chunky data sources directly to go and work with that. And that's what I add into the teaching in the data school. It's kind of giving this perspective. It's not just teaching the techniques, but how do you go and apply these techniques? And it's kind of a really fun challenge taking, some younger people earlier on in their career and kind of imparting okay, so this is the way it used to be, and this is what you're going to find when you go out there, because these situations still happen, through to, all right, how do you go and deploy these skills to kind of get past that? How do you deploy these tools to get over some of those challenges and gaps that are just still out there, and lots of people, and I mean a lot of people, are still facing?
Interesting. It's a good point, because I guess data prep is not a new challenge in an analytical world or business intelligence, as you said before, something that's been done for a while. So I guess just drilling into that a bit more, why write about Tableau Prep? It's a fairly new product. Why not up and running with SQL?
I think there's a lot of books out there about SQL, and I think they're all kind of targeted at the how do you go and do it, or how do you go and apply it, which is great, but it's kind of inferring that people are there, they've learned SQL, or they're picking it up because it's part of their job, and it's difficult to then go and grapple with the real applications of this, because there's very few opportunities you get to actually just go and try it, go and apply that learning. And wearing the Prep and Data t-shirt proudly today, but it is that weekly challenge where that's where we started to apply common challenges that I'd found in my career to Tableau Prep. And we found that actually it's a really neat tool that, again, lowers that barrier to entry nicely. But by having that chance to kind of go and work with the tool on your own challenges is really key. Coding solutions, they're just not open in most organizations to people because you can do too much damage with it. That read-only access is rare in most organizations that I've found. So having a tool that is really focused on the user, that I think more teams will have the opportunity to work with as part of the Tableau Creator license, opens that door. lowers that, again, the kind of barriers to entry of people working with data preparation for the first time. And this kind of culmination, this kind of right time, right place, right tool starts to kind of work its way through quite neatly.
Good. Yeah, I guess as you're saying that, I'm sort of thinking about prep doesn't really have a legacy, so they've got this great opportunity to write a product from the ground up for today's sort of analytical world. How do you think prep compares to some of the other tools, and do you think it's ready? Do you think it's even in the short amount of time Tableau have had, do you think they've done enough to get it to a point where it can be used alongside SQL or some of the other data tools out there?
Yeah, it's kind of a key question that I get asked quite a lot. So
Right.
it's 2.25 years old. So it feels like it's been around for a long time, but also for many people it hasn't. And I think it's that dichotomy that's a really interesting balance, because what it means is that certain people have used it for a while, they've got used to it, they're working their way through lots of their normal challenges with it. But also a lot of people coming to this new or haven't even heard of prep yet, and kind of the advantages it can have. So having that chance to go and start using prep in their situations, we are finding more gaps within the tool, and we're finding more challenges of it should be easier to do this. So that growth of usage is also kind of showing up a growth of gaps, either some things in terms of performance that in this situation, in this scenario, the tool doesn't perform as well as we want it to. Or actually, when I want to go and use the tool in this way to tackle this challenge that somebody hasn't used for a while or had the chance to apply in that situation yet, it does still kind of hit there's a few gaps in the product. So is it the most rounded preparation tool out there? No, but SQL's been out there for decades. Ultrix has been out there for 20 odd years. When we say 2 years, it sounds a long time, but actually in comparison to lots of the equivalents of Python and R and everything else, it's really not, especially when we think about those user years. It's definitely behind the curve on that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just to sort of drill in on that a little bit more, if we start to talk about the bits where you think Tableau could improve on. So Tableau, developing this product proactively, I think they have a monthly cadence at the moment in terms of releases, right? What are the key areas? You touched a bit on performance, but are there key sort of areas you think that the product can improve on in the next year or two?
Yeah, I think it can bubble down to kind of a couple of ideas. First of all, features. Secondly, performance in certain situations.
Okay.
So in terms of features, there's still some of those pesky things that we've wanted in the tool for a while. And the developers are probably fed up of hearing of me and a few others just going, hey guys, can we have this please?
I bet.
Please folks, let's have it. So that kind of bubbles down to this idea of copying down, which we're so used to in Excel. Like they even put a little square in the bottom of the cell to encourage you to go and drag down. It's that easy to do. Well, not all tools are set up to make that easy to do. And you've got to think about that user interaction, not just the user interaction, but how do you then go and replicate that, build that logic and play that through? We're so used to tools that just magically understand what we're trying to do. So Tableau Desktop, I'd go and drag this data field in and it builds me a chart in exactly the way I want to. That's amazing. Well, that's the genius behind SQL. In prep, they've taken lots of those kind of great bits of functionality and found a way to do some quite really complex stuff that used to took me days, weeks, months, maybe not months, but definitely weeks to just go and try and think around the logic. And now it's kind of bubbled down into probably a couple of clicks and a drag, and we've kind of solved the problem. And I just cry into my keyboard thinking about all of those weeks I've lost previously. But it's that kind of copy down is the piece that would be a really obvious one. Being able to work with the actual column headers in a more dynamic fashion would also be super useful to have. I know there are things that just feels like that's kind of common task that I do. And then on the flip side, the performance piece is, we're always going to have different size data, and I absolutely personally hate the term big data because it's not a question of size always, it's the complexity within that data set. I once worked with a data set that was 13 rows. It's just each value in that row was a 400+ page report that if you printed out in Excel, it's there. Strangely, when you do string calculations on that text, it doesn't perform well in whatever tool you put it through. So it's for me, it's about seeing those situations and testing that out further. And like I say, the more we pick up those situations, the better the performance can be refined, and we can kind of flag up where we don't get the behavior that we expect to get. Sometimes that's number of rows, often that's number of columns. Sometimes it's just about the way that Tableau Prep's connecting to that data source.
Right.
So yeah, please keep using the tool, everybody. It's for everybody's benefit.
Yeah, I guess Tableau's in that early journey, right, where it's the more people that use it, the more sort of the use cases really start to sort of come to fruition. And so what I wanted to do is just talk a bit about some of the big use cases you've seen so far for Tableau Prep. We've sort of been critical about what it could do better. What are people using it for then, if there's still some room for improvement?
Yeah, so I want to be balanced with this. The use cases are kind of endless, and that's what I'm kind of loving about Prep. Whenever anybody shows me what they're doing, it's like, you're using Prep in this scenario. That's really cool. I hadn't thought about doing that. So even though I've spent a whole load of time finding Prep and data challenges, thinking through those challenges, building out solutions, more people are coming to me every day with, well, this is what I'm using Prep for, and it's saving me hours. Awesome. So I think kind of the base use case that I saw very early on was, I've got complex join logic, so maybe multiple join conditions, and on top of that, those conditions aren't just a simple equals, greater than, less than. Some really cool logic that you can build around that. And I think just having that process broken away from desktop so users weren't inhibited by that, super useful in its own right. Secondly, cleaning up strings, group and replace within Tableau Prep using spelling, punctuation, common characters. It's a thing of absolute beauty. And I think so many data people who haven't had to do that battle with this set of string characters has to be identical to this one, really don't know the pain when it's just like, oh, well, that one's got a space, but that's easy, or that's got an exclamation mark at the end. That's easy to remove, right? Well, yes, if it was just one piece, but often we know when using data, it's not one piece, especially across hundreds of thousands of rows, where Prep's making that cleanup take about 2 seconds, which is making me just smile like an idiot most of the time, because it's just like, oh, why did I not know how to do this? So that's just super fun. All the way through to using more use cases. So survey data is a classic one that we've always had to battle in desktop, because the answer of how do you want your survey data, Steve Wexler, god of survey data in Tableau land.
I was about to say,
you know, there's multiple ways of looking at that survey data depending on the actual questions you've got, the structure you've got, how you want to visualize it. So going back to your earlier point, Tim, around iteration within data preparation, sometimes you do need to iterate as you go through. And I'm seeing that journey happen seamlessly with Prep and with desktop, and that works smoothly, especially having that ability to right click on a clean step as you go through the process in Prep and go and preview that data set, go and test the visualization idea you want to build. Has that worked? Am I still having to do workarounds to visualize that data set? If the answer is no, bingo, we're good. If the answer is yes, let's go back in and do some edits to that data set, restructure, clean up a little bit more to make it there. And then it's also opening the door to some really hard things that we've just not been able to really do in desktop before. So concepts like scaffolding, filling in those missing data points that we know should be there in a visualization, but that aren't. That's so much easier to do in Prep when I can just see the data and see how it's responding and see the number of rows that are coming out of a join, what's being excluded. It makes it just a kind of really slick process. And actually, I'm finding I'm doing more of the data exploration. I'm finding others are doing more of the data exploration in Prep rather than having to go and drive all of that work into desktop. And that's really neat to see. And the profile pane is a big part of that, because I spent a lot of time, my job at the bank, looking at data sets, which, if I'm honest, probably people hadn't looked at for 5, 10, 15 years. They've been growing and building up in the background. And if we needed data fields and I thought they're in there, I'd have to go and explore what's in there and see where suddenly we just don't have rows because that table didn't update for a year. And then someone remembered that they needed to have the SQL updated, so it dropped back in. But it's those kind of moments where Prep's just kind of making it fun, making it easy to do this stuff, but most importantly, empowering that user just to go and see this stuff so they know what's in their data, they know what they've got, more importantly, what they haven't got as well, to go and ask those questions of others.
And just briefly, do you think Tableau, do you feel like Tableau Prep has, in the 2 and a bit years that it's been around, been well integrated into the existing platform, because desktop is a well-known used product. I think people expect a level of familiarity when they come to Tableau Prep. So do you think they've sort of connected on that point? And will Tableau users watching this video find it a familiar place to be?
In many ways, yes. I think the actual hardest bit of prep at the moment is the calculated fields, which, depending on people's history of data and what they've done before, you know, as a trainer as well, when you get to calculated fields, it's either going to be something where they go, that's so easy to use. Yeah, or you kind of see the white of somebody's eyes with, okay, this isn't going well. Why is that person sweating a little bit? Okay, I need to be nice to that person. It's the same within prep. It's a drag and drop tool, same as desktop. But all of a sudden, we've got that kind of calculated field that's going to be new to some people. If you're a Tableau desktop user already, the likelihood is you're using calculated fields. That's in prep in exactly the same way, apart from aggregations a little bit with how the aggregate step works. But those calculations are going to feel like this warm, snug blanket that feels really familiar. You're going to be able to do some really tough stuff really easily.
Okay, good. You know, like as you were talking, one of the big features I'm looking forward to, actually, just before we move on, is browser. Right, in the browser is going to be an amazing addition, because touching on performance, servers are far more capable, right? So the browser, I think, is going to be the big unlock feature, right? It's going to be the console upgrade almost for Tableau Prep.
Yeah, and it's not just on performance. I also completely agree. It's going to be a real game changer, because all of a sudden loads more people should have access to the tool than what they did before. And I think this is it's a familiarization piece. And maybe we can come back and talk about prepping data in a mo. But it's having that chance to go and work with a tool that you almost don't know that you need. And sadly, I'm old enough and been doing this stuff for so long now that I remember what life was like when you didn't have Tableau Desktop and you had to put your report request into people like me at the insurer, or that centralized function to go and build you the analysis that you needed. We absolutely take for granted every single day, and most people in organizations do, that they can pick up a tool and get the data that they need or get the charts that they need to go and answer their question. I really feel like in 5 years, we're going to look back and go, well, of course you do that with data preparation. Why wouldn't you go and grab that data source from over there, go and connect to that database over there, fill the gaps with that API that we know that we have, just for a few clicks? And it's that moment that I feel like we're on that edge at the moment. And there's a really good chance that if people just start working with the tool, they're going to feel that empowerment. They're going to feel that benefit.
Excellent. Good. And I guess very last point, probably focus on the product before we talk more about the book, is this question of access. You know, I know you've written a chapter a bit about, you know, how do you get hold of prep? It seems like an obvious thing, right? You go to the website, you buy it, you get it. That's obviously been a bit of a challenge. So talk a bit more about that sort of challenge. How do you get hold of prep? How does it work?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because also we've both been using this misnomer of Tableau Prep. Tableau Prep doesn't actually exist. It's not a real thing. It's actually two tools. So we're falling foul of it, and we're a few minutes in already, right? So Tableau Prep, we actually mean by that Tableau Prep Builder. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to play yet, Tableau Prep Builder is like Tableau Desktop. It sits on your computer. You go and connect it to data, and you're producing an output, either for yourself or for somebody else. With desktop, we're going to go and connect to pretty clean data sources, nicely well structured. I can go and start doing my analysis work on desktop, and I can go and publish that off to the server, whether that's charts, dashboards, or preparing a data source for somebody. Tableau Prep, we're connecting to the same data sources, maybe different. Maybe we're having to go and join loads of different data sources together, restructure the columns that are in there, turn them into rows, or vice versa. But ultimately, the work we're doing is cleaning up data from potentially different sources to go and output a data source for Tableau Desktop. We're trying to actually make that link, or pushing directly to the server. So that's that Tableau Prep Builder piece. You get that through the Tableau Creator license at the moment. That is Tableau Prep Builder. You get Tableau Desktop and either a seat on server or online. So that's kind of the full package Tableau. That's actually what a lot of people have. So already you've probably got a lot of people out there who have the ability to go and get Tableau Prep Builder, start producing their own workflows, and they're in a good space. And then there's Tableau Prep Conductor. And Tableau Prep Conductor is part of the data management add-on on the server. So Tableau Prep Conductor is actually a server-based component And what that allows you to do is, once you've built those workflows within Prep Builder, publish them to the server to run on a schedule of whenever you want to. There's some brilliant error reporting within there, just as we have with extracts today. So that's all held within Postgres and makes life a lot easier for us. So kind of the database that sits behind the server. But also with data management add-on, we get data lineage. So not just where I'm going and building this data set, but also where it's being used in what workbooks, in which projects, and when it's being updated. So altogether, it's kind of rounding off this package of how do we go and actually produce data sources and then go and use them and actually monitor their usage.
It's kind of giving you, Prep is sort of part of this sort of high level overview of, you know, what you have access to. And I think it's a really good sort of placement, although I think most people might think initially that it's weird that it's in two separate SKUs, but I think it caters to a different type of user. So it's more of a user-centric sort of licensing model than you know, like a traditional sort of off-the-shelf box that you used to get for software, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I have conversations with people who start with Tableau Prep Build and go, well, why haven't I got Conductor? Or vice versa. They've got the data management add-on. It's like, well, why should I give control of the data preparation bit to my users? And it's kind of feeling like we just need to go and pull that story together and get one hand talking to the other. Because often, sometimes those conversations are in the same organization. But that's again part of having and building more of a community around data preparation. So we kind of feel the same thing that we do with the visualized part of Tableau.
Yeah, good. I think we've covered a lot about Tableau Prep. Of course, you've got a blog which talks all about Tableau Prep, so I'm sure a lot of this is there. But you've written a book, which is what we're actually here to talk about. And so I'm just looking at. I've got a digital sort of copy of the book here with me. I think the hard copy is just about to go live, right?
Yeah, there's been some early sightings of it in the US. So my content editor, Angela Irani, thank you, by the way, for getting me through this book writing. But she's got her hands on a physical copy. Apparently, due to COVID, there's some slightly slower response times in Europe. So they'll be making their way out soon. But I keep seeing the date of the 30th of September on Amazon, and they know everything, right? So
that's what I saw, right? Amazon are pretty good at fulfillment. Let's just say that. So just looking at the book, you've sort of sectioned it up in 5 chapters. Just talk a bit about sort of why you did it that way.
Yeah, I wanted to make something accessible because as a history and politics student, I know what it's like sitting in front of a 400-page book and going, I need to know all of this before I can carry on. And that's not a good feeling for anybody. Let's face it, it doesn't kind of engender that iterative spirit that we spoke about earlier. So what I wanted to do was just kind of bubble stuff down to, let's go and think about data preparation as the subject matter. Let's then go and think about the basics of what you actually want to go and start pulling that together, both in terms of the actual subject matter, as well as the actual kind of tool and how to interact the two together. Then let's go and push on those techniques that little bit further. So not that kind of first time I sit down at my computer, I don't need to know this, but I'll need to go and know it soon. And then there's the long-term repercussions of what actions I'm taking today. Because if I'm starting to build data sets today, do I end up with 200,000 data sources before somebody goes, right, so how should we manage these going forwards? No, you're gonna get to that point relatively quickly. So they're kind of the staging posts that I've set up throughout the book. Of it feels like the bits of the story as the story develops, what you'll actually get to.
Right, good. And in terms of you know, where should a user sort of focus their time? Let's say I'm brand new to Tableau Prep. I've come across your book. I've grabbed it. I've got Tableau Prep in front of me, and I've got my book in front of me. I've done the basic Tableau intro. How do you sort of suggest users sort of work their way through the book? How should they sort of chunk it?
Yeah, I still would say go and read those first few intro chapters, because to really think about data preparation, it's the same as building a dashboard. I think whenever you talk to any of the kind of great visualizers of data, they don't go, yeah, I started playing with the tool and kind of ended up with this masterpiece. It always comes back to planning. So I've got a chapter very early on about planning. So straight away after, how do you download this thing? Think about how you actually want to use it. And I think that's a big part of it for me, that even if you don't know how you're going to do it, thinking through, all right, what is my data set? What's my input? where do I want to get it to, and why do I need to get it there? And then what might some of those transitions be? And I find sketching is a great way to do that. So I would still recommend as a user to start there, because you're not going to know all the techniques. You might actually still need a really complex technique the first time you use prep. So rather than trying to teach somebody everything, if you work out those steps and transitions, it's not going to be that difficult to kind of Google that technique that you've got missing if you know where that fits in, or when you kind of start to find you're going off on a tangent because you've just found something really cool in the tool and I want to go and play. It gets you that chance to step back, look back at your plan and go, oh yeah, I needed to change my rows to a column there. I'm not quite sure which tool that is. Let's go and do a quick Google to go and find that. So I would still kind of take that step back and do that planning. Apart from that, it's then learning the basics of the steps. So what's my input look like? What's my output look like? What are some of those transitions I can do in between, whether it's cleaning or reshaping the data? And again, I'm intentionally trying to keep that bit of the book as short as possible. Although I have to say some great help from Jonathan Drummy with some recommendations on kind of some bits that I've missed and I really need to get in there. So Jonathan.
Okay. Good stuff. Sometimes when you do this thing, even when we're just doing consulting, right, there's some really obvious things that just sort of stare at you, but there's so much part of your everyday that they just sort of fade to the background. And so one of the challenges you probably had is, you're writing a book about it. How do you take yourself back to sort of those basics and make sure you've got it all in there? And so just touching on that, which was the hardest chapter? What chapter did you really sort of, which was the toughest to sort of get ideas onto paper and really get sort of the point across? Because the format of a book constricts you a little bit. It's not a video, it's not a class as you typically teach. So which was the sort of the toughest aspects of that?
I think the first introductory chapter to Hello Tableau Prep Builder, how do you go and get it and start working, and mostly where do you stop? Because very quickly it's like 400 and something pages later and it's like, okay, I now know everything about it, but that's not what I intended to do. I think Angela, my content editor, would have killed me for that. So I think just that kind of first bit of how do you get somebody going enough just so they get the rough idea of where you're going with them and where you're taking it. But then there's also some of the more challenging aspects of how do you take something that's simple when you do it every day, and how do you kind of go far enough back that it's the actual right thing to do without you feeling like you're patronizing your audience, or you've kind of kept it too complex. And that's where I bounced the book off a whole load of different people. So whether that was somebody studying at university, so Kim at Oxford, thank you very much, all the way through to my, let's say, local Excel user, my partner, Tony. Nice. She was great for being that non-Tableau audience to go, have I described this in a way that you can kind of pick this up and use this?
Good.
Because otherwise that's the kind of wrong clash. At the other end of the spectrum, how do you turn that hard stuff to be easy? And it's that kind of, that's also a really interesting challenge. So the chapter on the scripting step, where suddenly we now have this power to go and, to someone to leverage all of those great skills in Python and R that they might have. How do you kind of show that the tool's relevant for them and that they can use their superpower, but still hand over something to others that they'll be able to understand and use themselves?
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough challenge. I don't envy you. I think you've managed to synthesize lots of the core concepts. If I just think of it as a Tableau trainer, actually, one of the things they always ask you to do is to try and sort of synthesize challenges into small steps, right? And data prep is obviously one of those. And I think in the format of the book, you've actually almost written your book like a flow, right? There's a logical start and there's a conclusion, and it all flows really well. The biggest sort of chunk at the very end is when you start actually just talking generally about cleaning data. And one of the things I want to talk about is, when you were writing that chapter, sort of what were the core challenges that you see businesses having today? Let me rephrase that a little bit. What were the key concepts you were speaking to in that final chapter in terms of the challenges businesses have today in sort of everyday work?
I think I wanted to lay down the challenge to everybody.
Right.
Because I don't see any organization, and I've had the luxury of working in some pretty amazing clients and organizations,
Mhm.
but I've never fully seen everything powered by data. And what I
Right.
mean by that, I don't mean that algorithms are running the world. What I mean by that is that people have access to the data they want when they want it, and they have the ability to use it.
Right.
I just haven't seen that, and that's absolutely where I want to work to. Because for
Okay.
me, it's the same as having electricity or Wi-Fi. If you've got those kind of essentials, probably
Yeah.
water and food help as well, right? So,
Yeah. Like
um,
there's a few other things there. Yeah.
but in the everyday working world, it's that kind of thing that if you've got those essentials at your fingertips and you feel comfortable using them, we
Right.
can't help but make better decisions.
Okay.
I've been in too many organizations where gut instinct around the table has ruled the day.
Mhm.
And we look back a couple of months later and we've made some pretty shocking decisions. And, I put my hand up to that too. I've not always had, let's face it, all the facts, all the information that I should have done. And if I would have thought about that rather than thinking about, all right, how do I go and do this little bit of the task? If that little bit of the task is easier, my brain is then used on how do we actually go and make this thing better? And I think
Right.
that's genuinely, we've got some massive challenges in the world. And the only way that we're going to go and solve those and have the chance to go and deal with those is if we've got the right information at our fingertips. And for me, that comes from data, having the ability to go and grab the sources of data that I want and pair it
Yeah.
with my knowledge and expertise that I have.
Good. It's a very personal point in the current climate with coronavirus, the pandemic, and also lots of other challenges surfacing like climate change, equality and diversity. All of these challenges sort of driven by data, and sort of what you're saying very much speaks to that. If we can use data to sort of help bring light to these things, then I think yeah, excuse the pun, but the world would be a better place, right? It would be a much more sort of better decisions would be made, more broadly speaking. Okay.
I think it gives us a chance for that to happen. And I think
Right.
it's that chance is what I'm looking for. And yeah, as somebody who studied lots of lots of history and
Right.
political systems that haven't ever been right, and manipulation of power, we've got to give ourselves a better shot at doing this stuff. And for me, if we can get people to have more information at their fingertips and be able to go and dissect what's real and what's not, like that is a massive challenge that I don't envy the kind of young children, young people that are out there at the moment who over the next 10, 15, 20 years are coming into the working world and having to deal with all of this. That's going to be really tough unless we give them better tools to do things like this kind of work. So yeah, laying the challenge at everybody's door to how do you actually make this place better rather than just turning the handle.
Good stuff. All right. I guess one last topic. We've got the Tableau conference around the corner, right? And no doubt Tableau is going to be iterating this product a lot. So what are your sort of big expectations? What are you looking forward to this year's conference in relation to Tableau Prep, and sort of where you see the landscape going?
Uh, number one is an interesting one, maybe a little bit self-serving by me after
Right.
that last answer. But number one is more of awareness of Tableau Prep. I
Right.
think for so many people, for so many
Of
Tableau
course.
users, they're just not there with it. And I'd
Right.
love to start to understand why it's not there. So
Right.
there's for anybody who's attending the conference, there's something called a brain date where we can kind of meet up in small groups, or as it's also known, England's legislation around COVID at the moment. So, but we can do it electronically, so we're okay. So we have this chance to kind of go and talk about this. I would love to know from people why they aren't as interested in data prep as they are
Right.
in visualization. I have my own assumptions there. I don't want to share them. I want to have that as a conversation and see if there's anything I can do to help plug those gaps.
Get them in the comments, guys. Carl's open to suggestions. So.
Please let me know. Please let me know. And like I say, I have a hazard to guess a couple. One of its data prep isn't quite as sexy, but
Right.
it's a
Of course.
necessary part of the world. I think the second bit is filling more of those gaps within the tool and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of seeing what else is on the horizon. So in the latest release, 2020.3.3, because prep is monthly, we have to think about that last number too.
A little dot, yeah.
We had groups, which completely took me by surprise. So I kind of was hoping that they would come sometime, but I didn't see them enacted in the way that they actually were. And it's really slick to go and make something that's reusable that I can go and use elsewhere. So a step on from just being able to save the mini flows, nicknamed flowlets. Or there was fiscal year, and actually the developers have released fiscal year in such a way it solves one of the biggest complaints I've ever heard about Tableau Desktop, which is when you go and create a fiscal year, it puts a little FY in the front of it.
Right.
Which we work with lots of university clients over in the UK, and they hate that they can't have academic year instead of fiscal year. Prep doesn't put the little preface or prefix in place. So all of a sudden, yes, the feature's called financial years, but what we've actually got is something that fixes a whole load of issues that I can now go and report my August or September start dates rather than anything else, and that can be my year from then on. So there's little nuggets like that that still take me with joyous, geeky surprise that they're suddenly there in the tool. They're so easy to use and to be able to go and take on. I'd love to see a few more of those. If they fill some of those function gaps, great. If they go and build onto the tool, great as well. And I see the tool kind of going from strength to strength if we can get the community around this. And by community, I mean kind of everybody out there. I don't just mean the typical Tableau community having to do Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday. I really want people to feel comfortable cracking on with their data challenges, whatever they might be, in whatever tools as well. I'd love to see that as part of the open door policy of the conference by not having an attendance fee. Still during work hours for a lot of people, but I'd love to come and see more people coming to the table from different softwares, different backgrounds, people who haven't been able to fly to Vegas and attend the conference and have the chance to do that, to bring their thoughts to the table as well and see what they're doing and see the things and perspectives maybe we're missing because we're not seeing and hearing that on Twitter, on the forums, in other places. So hopefully that's kind of open door policy. Let's go and hear more of those thoughts.
Good stuff. I'm certainly looking forward to the conference. I think it's going to be an interesting one this year more than any. There's a bigger opportunity to bring people together because we're not geographically limited to how these connections work. So I'm hoping Tableau really sort of accentuate that point throughout the way they run conference. And I think you're running a couple of sessions, right? There's a couple of sessions of yours that we can watch.
I have, and they're beautifully scheduled. So like this, I've had to pre-record it. What's going on with this world? It's actually a lot harder than giving a live conference talk. I'd much rather have people to play off than just my own laptop and this guy, because otherwise it's just
plastic,
not quite the same. It's not plastic. Leave him alone.
I'm talking about the webcam.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, of course. So yes, I've got a talk on Tableau Prep tips. So that's a little bit of an intro to Tableau Prep, and also some kind of neat functions within the features and some kind of neat little workarounds that should save people a little chunk of time. But then I've also got a session through the Information Lab of talking about why Tableau Prep. So we spoke about some of those ideas earlier on, but we get into a little bit more of the detail of really where should you be using Prep within your organization and really who's the tool for. I also go into who it's not for, because just like Tableau Desktop, it's not this magic elixir that fixes everything. It's a tool for certain use cases, and like I say, those use cases are growing. But wanted to kind of do a session on that. So thanks to Tom and the rest of the team at the Information Lab for letting me have a little virtual soapbox to get on top of and share my thoughts on that.
Good stuff. Right. I think we're pretty much there. Last final question. A sin to not ask this. How do people get hold of the book?
All your favorite bookstores. So in the UK, we have either Amazon, or if you still believe in physical bookshops, I've seen the book listed on Waterstones as well. So I'm sure there'll be others around as the release date gets closer. But across the world, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, I've seen the book listed. So there's lots of good bookstores out there, and please do support your locals. It's an amazing place to be, especially as a history guy surrounded by a few history books here. It's kind of a great place to go. So do support your locals if you can. Otherwise, you can go directly to O'Reilly. It is available as paperback as well as electronic version. And that opens up some fun challenges in terms of me keeping that up to date a little bit fresher as well. So that will happen as the tool develops. You won't feel the book get too far out of date. And I will just plug while I'm here, prepanddata.com.
Absolutely.
It's a site where, as Tableau Prep releases new features, as Tim records videos, I write blog posts on those new features. So I'll be sharing them on there as well. So the book should really give you that strong foundation for what you want to do with the tool, to take on those data preparation challenges. Will keep you up to date on prepping data with me. And who knows, there might be a second book if I'm ever creating.
I was about to say, has this put you off another book? It doesn't sound like it has.
It kind of hasn't. It's ridiculously hard work, and it's hard work by a whole big team of people. So right. Danny, Angela, Michelle at O'Reilly, huge amounts of work by all of those folks at different stages of the process, and Suzanne in terms of marketing, but also for all of the reviewers who gave up a lot of their time to chip in their thoughts from loads of different perspectives. So I've mentioned a few already, but Luke Stoughton, Dan Farmer. A huge amount of effort from a lot of folks. So yeah, thank you very much, team, for making it hopefully what will become really rich and useful for a lot of people in terms of a resource on this whole data preparation thing and Tableau Prep.
Good stuff. I think that's it. I think that's pretty much everything we had to ask here on the premiere. Now, if you've got any questions, Carl and I are going to stick around in the comments and answer a whole load more questions. And of course, once this is done, you can still ask more questions in the comments below. We'll be sure to put a link to all the things we've talked about in the description. So if you're watching this wondering how can I get hold of something, just look in the description. We'll put links to the sessions, the book, Amazon, everything. It'll all be in the description. And while you're here, subscribe to the Information Lab channel. We've got lots more content like this as well, not just Carl, but a whole range of people in the Information Lab produce a load of great content, especially some of the data scholars that Carl is coaching at present. They're producing some absolutely incredible content on the how-to series. So check that all out. Make sure you get involved, and stay tuned for the next live stream or premiere that we launch on the channel. From me, Tim, the host, goodbye, and from Carl,
goodbye as well.